The ship Aurora moved through the deep silence of space, its silver surface glowing under the soft light of a nearby star. Inside, a group of travelers prepared for docking at Delta Station, one of the largest trading centers in the outer colonies. The place was known as the heart of the Union, where hundreds of species came together to share knowledge, trade goods, and debate rules of science and culture. For most, Delta Station was a dream destination. For Mira, it was her new home. Mira stood near the observation window as the blue and gold rings of Delta Station came into view. Her eyes followed the small docking ships that circled it like fireflies. She felt excitement mixed with nervousness. The view was breathtaking, yet she could not forget the purpose that brought her here. She was a biologist sent by the Earth Council to study new species and help establish ethical research programs for the Galactic Union. It was an honor few received, and she had worked for years to earn it. As the ship approached the docking bay, Mira could see different alien vessels lined up, tall and crystal-shaped, some glowing faintly, others dark and smooth like volcanic stone. The sight reminded her of how small humans were in the grand scale of the galaxy, yet how far they had come. Just a few centuries ago, they had barely stepped beyond their solar system. Now they lived among beings who had mastered energy fields, shaped planets, and recorded histories older than human civilization itself. The intercom sounded, and the captain's calm voice echoed through the cabin. "Attention passengers, prepare for docking sequence. Welcome to Delta Station. Customs and biological scan required upon entry." Mira picked up her small bag and took a deep breath. Around her, travelers adjusted their clothing, prepared documents, and practiced greetings in the Union's shared trade language. Mira had studied it for years, but she still found some sounds difficult. The Union was proud of its rules, especially those about genetics. Every species was required to register its DNA code before entering the station. It was a system meant to prevent disease, hybrid confusion, and unauthorized genetic mixing. The idea of such strict classification fascinated Mira as a scientist, but also unsettled her as a human being. She often thought about how humans had long believed that identity was more than biology. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and the travelers stepped into the arrival corridor. The walls shimmered with light patterns that shifted in response to movement. Mira paused for a moment, letting the sight sink in. The corridor was filled with beings of all shapes and sizes. Tall insectoid traders from the Carene system, translucent diplomats from the Glade worlds, and smooth-skinned blue scholars from the Talarians. Each group moved in calm order, guided by robotic drones that carried translation devices and scanners. Mira followed the line toward the customs area. A Talarian officer stood behind the counter, his silver eyes calm but observant. His species was known for logic and precision. The officer greeted her politely and gestured toward a scanner shaped like an open ring. "Step forward for genetic verification," he said in fluent trade speech. Mira nodded and stepped into the ring. A soft hum filled the air as a blue light passed over her body. A small screen displayed a genetic signature, 100% human, Earth origin, medically stable. The officer checked the result and handed her an identification chip. "You are cleared, Dr. Mira. Welcome to Delta Station. Please report to the Science Wing, Level 6. "Thank you," she replied with a smile. As she walked through the terminal, she admired the beauty around her. The ceiling opened into a transparent dome, showing stars that glittered like dust on black silk. Floating platforms carried travelers between levels. Food stalls offered scents she couldn't identify, some sweet, some sharp, some earthy. A group of children with shimmering skin chased glowing spheres while their guardians watched nearby. It felt alive, colorful, and peaceful. Yet beneath the harmony, Mira sensed a quiet tension. Conversations hushed when new species passed. Guards at every corridor watched with alert eyes. The Union was proud of its unity, but it was built on fragile trust. Mira reached the elevator that led to the Science Wing. As she waited, a tall Gladian approached her. The being's body looked like crystal wrapped in soft light. "You are human," it said in a musical voice. "We heard humans have strong curiosity. Are you here to study life or to understand it?" Mira smiled at the question. "Maybe both," she replied. "Life is more than what we see under a scanner." The Gladian's light pulsed gently, which Mira had learned was their way of smiling. "A poetic answer," it said. "I hope your curiosity brings no trouble." When the elevator doors opened, Mira stepped inside. The Science Wing was quiet and clean. with walls that shifted color depending on the level of activity. She found her assigned lab and entered her access code. The door opened with a soft chime, revealing a small but well-equipped research space. Holographic screens floated above the main desk, showing maps of biological samples from different planets. There were containment units, microscanners, and a communication console linked directly to the Earth Council. Mira placed her bag down and touched the nearest console. The system recognized her and activated the welcome interface. "Greetings, Dr. Mira. You have been assigned to Biological Research Division 3. Primary objective: study cross-species genetic compatibility in non-terrestrial ecosystems." She read the line twice. The project was exactly what she had hoped for, understanding how different species could share life environments. Yet she knew the topic was sensitive. The Union had strict boundaries about hybridization research. Anything beyond observation was forbidden without council permission. As she settled in, her assistant arrived, a short, round robot with a voice that sounded cheerful and patient. "Hello, Dr. Mira. I am Unit 4A, your assigned assistant. Would you like to begin unpacking your samples or review the local database first?" Mira smiled. "Let's start with the database. I want to know what kind of life forms are active in this sector." The robot projected a large image showing dozens of species' DNA strands. Each line moved and glowed, representing the unique patterns of life. Mira felt a familiar excitement rise in her chest. Every strand told a story of evolution, adaptation, and survival. But there was one thing that caught her attention. Among all the registered species, not a single one showed more than 10% genetic overlap with humans. The Union maintained that no known intelligent life shared ancestry with Earth species. Mira stared at the data quietly. "Strange," she said. "The universe is so large, yet we are completely alone in our code." Unit 4A responded, "That is the current understanding, Doctor. Genetic overlap greater than 10% would suggest shared origin, which the Union's records deny." "Still," she murmured, "life finds a way to surprise us. Maybe the scanners just haven't met the right mystery yet." Over the next few hours, Mira explored the station further. She visited the observation decks where scientists from various worlds exchanged samples. She listened to lectures on exogenetics, where the Talarian scholars spoke with precise and careful logic. To them, everything about life could be measured, categorized, and predicted. Mira admired their knowledge but couldn't help feeling that something was missing, a sense of connection, perhaps, or wonder beyond data. Later that evening, she found herself standing near the garden dome, a quiet place filled with plants from dozens of worlds. Artificial sunlight glowed through glass leaves and streams of recycled water ran between the pathways. She took a deep breath, enjoying the soft, earthy scent that reminded her of home. A small voice spoke beside her. "You are new here." Mira turned and saw a young Talarian girl, perhaps 10 in human years, holding a small glowing orb. The girl's silver eyes studied her curiously. "Yes," Mira said kindly. "I arrived today." "My name is Mira. What's yours?" "Lund," the girl replied. "My parent works for the council. They say humans ask too many questions." Mira laughed softly. "That's probably true. Asking questions is how we learn." The girl tilted her head. "But aren't you afraid of answers that change what people believe?" Mira thought for a moment. "Sometimes, yes. But truth is not meant to be comfortable. It's meant to be understood." Lund nodded slowly, as if trying to hold on to the idea. Then she smiled and ran off to join a group of other children. Mira watched her go, feeling a quiet warmth inside. It reminded her why she had chosen this life, to explore not just what was possible, but what was meaningful. As night settled on Delta Station, the stars outside shifted in the viewing dome. Mira sat at her desk in her quarters, writing her first report. She noted the efficiency of the station, the cooperation between species, and the precision of their systems. But she also added a small personal note. Humans remain the only known species with strong emotional definition of family and shared belonging beyond genetic relation. The Union sees life as code, but we see life as connection. I wonder if that difference will matter one day. She didn't know then that her words would soon be tested in the most unexpected way. Somewhere out beyond the quiet borders of the station, a discovery waited, one that would challenge the Union's rules, confuse every scanner, and force her to prove what humanity truly meant when it said, That's family. The next morning, the soft hum of Delta Station filled the lab as Mira prepared for the formal analysis of Tali. Sunlight from the observation dome cast long patterns across the floor, creating a calm and almost magical atmosphere. Tali sat quietly on a soft mat, her small hands clasped together. Mira smiled and knelt beside her. "Today we will learn more about you, Tali," she said gently. "Nothing will hurt you. I promise." Tali's eyes, bright and curious, met hers. A faint nod followed. Mira felt a surge of reassurance. Despite the uncertainty that the child's genetic makeup would bring, trust had begun to grow between them. Unit 4A floated nearby, projecting holographic screens of scanners and data collectors. Mira activated the first series of devices. They were designed to collect non-invasive readings of DNA, protein structures, and cellular activity. Mira had run thousands of samples in her career, but the anticipation in this moment made her hands tremble slightly. She had seen nothing like Tali before. The scanner began its hum, blue light passing softly over Tali's skin. Tali watched the light with wide eyes, fascinated by the shimmering patterns. Mira kept her voice calm and soothing. "See the lights, Tali? They are just here to understand your body. They are friendly." Tali reached out and lightly touched the glowing surface. Unit 4A recorded the motion, noting that her motor skills were excellent. Mira felt a quiet admiration. "You are very observant," she said. The first wave of results appeared on the main holographic display. Mira leaned in, eyes scanning the data carefully. Unit 4A projected a detailed analysis, showing sequences and cross-species markers. "Dr. Mira," Unit 4A said, its tone steady but slightly hesitant, "initial genetic mapping indicates extraordinary overlap. Human traits 98%, Talarian traits 96%. Such overlap is statistically impossible according to the Union's biological parameters." Mira's heart skipped a beat. She had suspected Tali's uniqueness, but seeing it confirmed by a scanner was almost surreal. She reached out and touched the screen lightly. "Impossible according to rules," she murmured. "But Tali exists. That is real enough." Unit 4A continued. "Recommendation: escalate data to Council for verification. The subject may be considered an anomaly. Analysis may require specialized oversight." Mira shook her head gently. "Not yet. First, we understand the child. The Council will see, but not until we know more." Tali, who had been silent, looked up at Mira. "Mira," she whispered. "Yes, Tali?" Mira replied. "Numbers. Strange?" Tali asked, pointing at the holographic sequences. Mira smiled softly. "Yes, they are strange. But numbers are only part of the story. You are more than a number. You are alive. And that is what matters." Tali's small fingers traced patterns in the air, imitating the holographic strands. Mira felt a strange warmth, a mix of awe and hope. This child, so fragile yet so extraordinary, held something beyond any scientific measurement, a life that mattered in its own right. Hours passed as Mira and Unit 4A conducted detailed scans. Every layer of DNA, every cellular pattern, every metabolic trace was analyzed. Each time, the results confirmed the extraordinary fact. Tali's body contained a near-complete combination of human and Talarian traits. To any Union scientist, this would be a biological paradox. By afternoon, the lab's communication console beeped. It was a message from the Union's Genetic Council. Message: Dr. Mira. Preliminary anomaly detected. Council requests immediate full report on unregistered life form. Failure to comply may result in containment. Response required within standard observation window. Mira frowned. She had anticipated this, yet seeing it written in formal language made the situation more real. She turned to Unit 4A. "They want to take her?" Mira asked softly. Unit 4A's sensors scanned Tali. "Council oversight typically involves secure containment. They will classify the life form as an anomaly until verification is complete." Mira's jaw tightened. "No, Tali is a child. She is not an anomaly. She is living and learning. We will handle this carefully." Tali watched the interaction quietly. Her small voice asked, "Mira? Leave?" Mira shook her head. "No, Tali, I will not leave you. We will face this together. The numbers are unusual, but they do not define you." That evening, Mira prepared a secure report for the Council, including every scan, reading, and observation. The report was thorough, detailing Tali's physiology, behavior, and intelligence. Every entry emphasized care, not classification. Mira carefully avoided language that would make the council see Tali as merely a specimen. Once the report was sent, Mira returned to Tali. The child was sitting quietly by the observation dome watching the stars. Mira sat beside her and spoke softly. Tomorrow the council will see your scans. They may not understand, but you are more than numbers. Remember that. Tali nodded, resting her head on Mira's shoulder. Mira felt a quiet resolve. No matter what the council said, she would protect the child. The next morning, a small delegation arrived at the lab. Council representatives from several species had come to observe Tali's scans. Among them were Talarians, Gladians, and Karen diplomats. Mira stood confidently, Tali beside her. The lead Talarian scientist activated the main scanner. "Dr. Mira, please allow a full analysis," he said. Mira nodded. Tali sat quietly, hand in Mira's, watching the machine activate. The scanner hummed, lights passing over Tali's body, projecting data streams onto the main display. The room was silent, the representatives leaning forward. The readings began to flash. Every display, every chart confirmed what Unit 4A had already reported. Human and Talarian traits combined in ways considered impossible. The room filled with murmurs. "This should not exist," the lead scientist said, frowning. "Genetic overlap this high is beyond current biological models. The probability of such a combination is effectively zero." Mira stood tall. "I understand the numbers are extraordinary. But Tali is alive. She is learning, feeling, and growing. She is not a calculation. She is a child." Another representative, a Gladian scholar, leaned forward. "But Dr. Mira, the council's concern is not malice. Rules exist to prevent interference between species. This child could challenge biological laws." Mira shook her head. "Some laws are meant to protect, not to limit understanding. Tali is here. We cannot ignore what exists simply because it challenges rules. Our responsibility is to care, study ethically, and protect life." The Talarian scientist raised an eyebrow. "Do you claim this child is human or Talarian?" Mira smiled softly. "She is both and neither. She is Tali. That is enough." There was a long silence in the room. The council members exchanged glances, unsure how to respond. They were trained to trust numbers, probabilities, and logic. But here in front of them was evidence that could not be explained by charts or charts alone. A living, breathing child looked at them with intelligence and trust. Tali reached out to Mira's hand. "Mira, family?" she asked. Mira squeezed her hand gently. "Yes, Tali, that is family. We will face everything together." The council murmured among themselves. The Talarian lead scientist cleared his throat. "Dr. Mira, the report will be reviewed. Interim protocol requires observation. No harm will come to the child during this period. Further decisions will be made by the Union Genetic Council." Mira nodded. "Thank you. I ask that the child be allowed to remain under my care during observation. She's a minor, and her well-being must be the priority." After a tense pause, the council agreed. The representatives left, taking their notes and data, leaving Mira and Tali alone. Mira exhaled slowly. She turned to Tali, who had been quietly watching. "It is done," Mira said. "They will study the numbers, but you are safe with me." Tali smiled faintly. "Safe, Mira." Mira felt a wave of relief and warmth. Despite the extraordinary challenge ahead, the trust between them had grown stronger. Tali's presence reminded her why humanity mattered in the galaxy. Curiosity, compassion, and the choice to protect life, no matter what the numbers said. That evening, Mira and Tali sat by the observation dome. Outside, Delta Station glittered against the darkness of space. Mira spoke softly, telling Tali stories of humans, their struggles, and the bonds they shared. She explained that family was not measured in genes alone, but in care, loyalty, and choice. Tali listened quietly, her small hand in Mira's. Mira knew that the days ahead would be filled with questions, council reviews, and possibly challenges from species who could not understand. But she also knew one thing with certainty. Tali had a place in the galaxy. She was not just a genetic anomaly. She was living proof that life could surprise even the most precise scanners, and Mira, as a human, would stand by her. The galaxy had never faced a combination like Tali before. It was a puzzle, a miracle, and a challenge all at once. And in the quiet of the lab, Mira realized that no council, no scanner, and no rule could ever define what it truly meant to be family. The morning light on Delta Station was soft and golden. shining through the wide dome of the observation deck. Mira stood at the edge, watching freighters and small cargo ships glide along the space lanes. Life on the station moved with a calm rhythm, yet Mira felt a faint tension she could not explain. It was a sensation she had learned to recognize over years of exploring new worlds, the quiet before a discovery. She had already familiarized herself with most of the lab's systems. Unit 4A, her small robotic assistant, hummed cheerfully as it floated nearby, organizing sample files and updating her digital database. Mira felt comfortable in the lab, surrounded by the glow of holographic screens and the soft hum of machinery. Still, a part of her longed for exploration. She wanted to step beyond the clean hallways of the station, to see worlds untouched by scanners and rules. That chance arrived sooner than she expected. A call came from the Border Control Office. "Dr. Mira, your expertise is requested immediately. There is an unregistered life form detected near the outpost on Sector Delta 7. It requires biological assessment before council evaluation." Mira's heart quickened. Unregistered life forms were rare, and most were plants, small creatures, or anomalies that did not challenge Union records. But the voice on the intercom sounded serious. She nodded even though the operator could not see her. "Understood," she said. "I will prepare for departure." By the time she reached the docking bay, a small shuttle was waiting. Mira entered and secured her samples, making sure her scanning devices were ready. Unit 4A followed, its sensors adjusting to the shuttle's limited space. The shuttle's engines hummed and lifted smoothly, leaving the station behind as it glided toward the border world. Delta 7 was quiet, almost empty. Its landscape was a mix of soft hills and thin forests of silver-leaf trees that shimmered under the star's light. Mira landed near the outpost, a small building abandoned years ago. Broken equipment and scattered crates suggested it had once been used for research, but now it was silent. She stepped out carefully, scanning the area with her portable biodetector. The device beeped faintly, indicating a life form nearby. Mira's eyes followed the signal to a small hollow beneath a hill. There, crouched in the shadows, was a child. The child's appearance was unlike anything Mira had seen. Bronze skin shimmered faintly, reflecting the light like metal, yet soft human-like eyes stared back at her. Hair was dark and fine, curling softly around the face. The child's body was small, weak from hunger or exhaustion, but it radiated a quiet intelligence that Mira could not ignore. "Hello," Mira said gently, kneeling at a distance. "I am Mira. I will not hurt you." The child's eyes widened and it took a small step back. Then it whispered a word Mira recognized, a human word, though spoken softly and uncertainly. "Home." Something inside Mira stirred. She knew this child had been through fear and isolation. She reached out slowly, letting her hand hover in plain view. The child hesitated, then moved closer, drawn by the calmness in her voice. Mira smiled softly. "You are safe now. Come with me." The child nodded faintly and Mira helped it to stand. She noticed small features that hinted at a complicated ancestry. The hands were delicate but strong, the eyes deep and expressive. Mira's mind raced. She had studied genetics for years, but the patterns she saw did not match anything she had recorded. Back at the shuttle, Mira offered the child water and a small energy pack. The child accepted quietly, eyes watching her with curiosity. Mira noticed it had difficulty speaking, only repeating small words in soft tones. Unit 4A scanned the child carefully. "Life form classification unknown," it said in its cheerful tone. "Genetic signature incomplete. Highly unusual structure detected. Recommend immediate lab analysis." Mira nodded. "We will do that, but first let's make sure the child feels safe." She gently guided the child to sit on a soft mat. "Do you have a name?" she asked. The child thought for a moment, then whispered, "Tali." "Tali," Mira repeated. "That is a good name. I am Mira. You will stay with me until we understand everything about you." The journey back to Delta Station was quiet. Tali watched the stars pass outside the shuttle's window, her small hands pressed against the glass. Mira kept glancing at her, feeling a protective warmth. For Mira, this was no longer just a scientific mission. Tali was more than a specimen. She was someone in need of care. When they arrived at the station, security officers approached, scanners at the ready. Mira held Tali close. "This is a new life form," she explained. "I found her on Delta 7. She is alone. I will conduct the proper analysis. Please allow her to enter the station under my supervision." The officers exchanged cautious glances. "Authorization required," one said. "All life forms must be reported and held for council review." "I understand," Mira said firmly. "But she is a child. She needs protection first. The scan can be conducted in my lab immediately." After a tense moment, the officers allowed her to pass. Mira felt a rush of relief as she led Tali through the corridors. Unit 4A followed, projecting maps and monitoring Tali's vital signs. Back in the lab, Mira carefully placed Tali on a soft mat. The child's eyes were wide, scanning every corner of the room. Mira knew that in unfamiliar surroundings, trust could take time to develop. She crouched beside Tali. "You are safe here," Mira said. "Nothing will hurt you. Can you tell me anything about where you came from?" Tali shook her head. "Home. Gone," she whispered. Her voice was fragile, yet there was a quiet strength that suggested she had survived much already. Mira nodded, keeping her tone gentle. "We will find out what happened. For now, we just need to rest." Unit 4A began a preliminary analysis, taking non-invasive samples from Tali. The robot's sensors scanned her DNA structure, cell patterns, and energy signatures. Mira watched the holographic display with growing curiosity. The results were unusual. "Dr. Mira," Unit 4A said, "genetic analysis indicates multiple traits not previously recorded. Probability of shared ancestry with humans, 98%. Probability of shared ancestry with Talarians, 96%. This combination is biologically improbable." Mira stared at the readout. The numbers were remarkable. Humans and Talarians were considered completely separate in the Union's records. No hybrid had ever been documented, and genetic overlap this high should not exist. She looked at Tali, who was now sitting quietly and tracing patterns on the floor with her fingers. Mira felt a mix of wonder and concern. "Impossible according to the scanners," she murmured, "but clearly alive and well." Unit 4A beeped softly. "Recommendation forward analysis to Union Council." Mira shook her head gently. "Not yet. We need to understand her first. Numbers can wait." "The child comes first," hours passed. Mira fed Tali small portions of food, and the child gradually relaxed. She explored the lab, touching equipment and staring at holographic screens with fascination. Mira realized that despite Tali's unusual genetic makeup, her curiosity and intelligence were clear. She was learning quickly, observing everything with careful attention. By evening, Mira sat with Tali near the observation dome. Outside, Delta Station gleamed like a jewel against the dark canvas of space. Tali's small hand rested in Mira's, a quiet trust forming between them. "Do you want to know about humans?" Mira asked softly. Tali nodded. "We are explorers, thinkers, and dreamers. We care for family, friends, and even strangers. Being human means making choices about love, kindness, and courage. It does not depend on who we look like or what our genes say." Tali tilted her head, listening carefully. Mira smiled. She did not know if the child understood all her words, but the small hand in hers felt steady and sure. It was a connection stronger than any scanner could measure. As night settled, Mira prepared to begin the detailed scientific assessment the next day. She knew the discovery of Tali's genetic overlap would shake the Union's assumptions, but she also knew one truth above all. This child was not just a puzzle to be solved. Tali was family. Mira sat quietly watching the stars and thinking of the journeys ahead. Somewhere out there, answers waited. But for now, she felt peace in the knowledge that compassion, curiosity, and care were more powerful than any scanner reading or genetic chart. The universe could classify and calculate, but humanity would always define connection and choice. Tali curled up near her, finally resting. Mira gently covered her with a soft blanket and whispered, "We will face everything together." In the quiet of the lab, surrounded by the hum of Delta Station, Mira realized that this was the beginning of something extraordinary, the kind of discovery that did not just challenge science, but the very way life was understood across the galaxy. And for the first time, she felt certain of one thing: Tali was exactly where she belonged. The morning of the hearing arrived, and Delta Station seemed quieter than usual. The observation dome reflected soft light across the polished hallways, but the usual hum of daily life felt subdued. Mira prepared for the council meeting with a mixture of determination and concern. Today would not be easy. Tali stayed close to Mira, her small hand holding Mira's as they walked through the corridors toward the council chambers. Mira had dressed simply, her clothing professional but comfortable, designed to put the child at ease. She had explained everything to Tali as gently as possible. "We will go together," Mira said softly. "I will speak for you. You do not need to say anything unless you want to." Tali nodded quietly. Her bright eyes, filled with curiosity and trust, looked up at Mira. Mira felt a surge of protective warmth. The child had been through so much already, yet here she was, calm and resilient. The council chambers were vast, circular, and lined with seats for representatives from dozens of worlds. At the center was the dais for the council leaders, their robes shimmering with color and patterns unique to each species. The walls displayed large holographic screens, showing Delta Station's records, genetic charts, and life-form registries. The room carried an air of solemnity. Decisions made here were final and binding across the Union. Mira and Tali were guided to a platform at the front, where a secure area allowed Tali to sit safely without fear of being separated. Council officers instructed Mira to present her findings. Mira took a deep breath and began. "Honorable members of the Union Genetic Council," she said clearly, "I present Tali, a child discovered on Delta 7, whose genetic composition challenges current records and scientific understanding. Initial scans indicate a combination of human and Talarian traits that should be impossible. Yet she is alive, intelligent, and learning. My report includes all observed data, but I ask the Council to remember one important fact. This is a child. Not a specimen, not an anomaly, but a living being who deserves care, protection, and understanding." The chamber was silent. Representatives shifted in their seats, some exchanging glances, others studying the floating charts. The Talarian lead scientist spoke first. "Dr. Mira, the results you present are indeed unprecedented. According to Union records, no life form should exhibit this degree of overlap between humans and Talarians. Such a combination is statistically impossible. How do you propose the Council classify this being?" Mira looked at Tali, whose small hand was still in hers. "I do not propose to classify her as anything other than what she is," Mira said firmly. "She is Tali, she exists. She has emotions, intelligence, and the ability to learn. Classification should not remove her rights or her dignity. That is what makes her human and more than just data." Another representative, a Gladian scholar, leaned forward. "Dr. Mira, we understand your concern for the child, but the Council's purpose is to maintain order and prevent interference between species. If this child were to interact with others without regulation, we could risk unpredictable outcomes." Mira shook her head gently. "Predictable or not, this child cannot be ignored. She is not dangerous. She requires observation, understanding, and care. Punishing or isolating her because she is unique would contradict the very principles the Union claims to protect: life, knowledge, and compassion." A low hum of agreement spread through some seats. While others remained skeptical, Mira continued, her voice calm but firm. "Tali's existence is proof that life can surprise us. The scanners may not understand her. The records may not explain her, but she is real. And she is not alone. I am her guardian, and I will ensure she receives care that respects her intelligence and her right to grow." "That is our responsibility as members of the Union," the Council murmured. The Talarian lead scientist adjusted his robes and leaned closer to the main console. "Dr. Mira, your words are admirable, but the Council cannot simply ignore biological laws. What you ask challenges the principles we have followed for centuries. Are you certain that your emotional attachment is not influencing your judgment?" Mira met his gaze steadily. "I am certain that care, empathy, and responsibility are not mistakes. Science without humanity is incomplete. Tali is not merely a challenge to our records. She is a life that needs guidance and support. The choice to protect her is not a mistake, it is necessary." Another voice spoke from the rear of the chamber, soft but firm. "And if she were to exhibit traits that the Union does not recognize, traits that appear dangerous or unpredictable?" Mira's voice did not waver. "Every child has the potential to surprise, to challenge, and to learn. We do not punish children for what they might become. We guide, educate, and protect. Tali is no different, except that her genetic makeup is extraordinary. She is still a child. Her right to care must remain paramount." For several minutes, silence filled the chamber. Every representative seemed caught between logic and instinct. The charts on the screens blinked rapidly, showing impossible probabilities. Yet a small child sat at the front quietly holding Mira's hand. That hand, small and trusting, carried more truth than any chart or rule ever could. Finally, the lead Talarian scientist spoke again. Dr. Mira, the council will deliberate. Interim observation will be granted under your supervision. The child is to remain in your care while we review her genetic status and potential impact on Union protocols. No harm will come to her during this period. We caution, however, that any findings must be reported immediately. Mira nodded respectfully. Thank you. That is all I ask. Tali's safety and well-being are my responsibility. I will ensure she is protected. The council members began to rise, signaling the end of the session. Mira led Tali back toward the lab, feeling a mixture of relief and anticipation. She knew this was only the beginning. The council's review could take weeks, and some species might resist her choices. But for now, Tali was safe, and that mattered most. As they walked, Tali's small voice asked softly, Mira, they scared? Mira smiled gently. Not anymore, Tali. We face them together. You are safe, and that is what counts. Tali's eyes brightened slightly, and she leaned closer to Mira. Family? Yes, Mira said firmly. Family. Back in the lab, Mira prepared a small area for Tali to rest. She gathered blankets, soft mats, and toys to keep the child comfortable. Unit 4A assisted, projecting gentle lights and soothing sounds to create a calm environment. Mira watched Tali settle down, the child's small body finally relaxing. Mira took a moment to sit at her desk reviewing the data and notes from the hearing. She realized that this case would be studied across the galaxy, debated for decades, and perhaps even rewritten in scientific textbooks. But she also understood that the heart of the matter was simple. Tali was a living being who deserved care and compassion above all else. As the day turned to night, Mira joined Tali near the observation dome. Stars shimmered across the sky, reflecting in Tali's wide, curious eyes. Mira spoke softly, telling the child stories of humans and Talarians, of explorers who had faced impossible odds and chosen courage over fear. She explained that family was not measured by rules, charts, or probabilities, but by the choices to protect, support, and care for one another. Tali listened quietly, her small fingers tracing patterns in the air. Mira could see understanding growing even in this young mind. The child's trust was firm, and that trust had become Mira's guiding light. Unit 4A floated beside them, monitoring the room and projecting a soft, ambient glow. Mira watched as Tali's breathing evened, her small body finally resting after the long day. Mira gently covered her with a soft blanket, brushing a strand of hair from her face. We will face whatever comes next, Mira whispered. Together. The hum of Delta Station outside the dome was steady and calming. Mira knew the council's final decision could take time, and there could be questions she could not answer. But in that quiet moment, she also knew that she had done what was right. Tali was not just a puzzle or an anomaly. She was life itself, a miracle that reminded Mira why humanity mattered, the ability to choose love, care, and family beyond any rule or scanner. As Mira turned to leave the observation dome, she looked back at Tali, sleeping peacefully. The child's presence was a promise, a spark of hope in a universe that often valued data over life. Mira smiled softly. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would meet them with courage. And Tali, her small, extraordinary child, would face the galaxy not alone, but with a family who chose her every day. Mira stepped out of the dome, the weight of responsibility heavy but filled with purpose. The council had seen her argument, but the true victory was not in their approval. The true victory was in Tali's trust, in her safety, and in the quiet understanding that life, no matter how impossible it seemed, was worth protecting. And for Mira, that was enough to face anything the galaxy could throw their way. The Union Council deliberation had taken longer than Mira expected. Days passed in a blur of meetings, reports, and consultations. Delta Station remained calm on the surface, but Mira could sense the quiet anticipation building around Tali's case. News of the unusual child had spread quickly, whispered among researchers, diplomats, and station staff. Some were curious, some skeptical, and others filled with cautious hope. Mira spent the mornings in the lab with Tali, reviewing scans, reading stories aloud, and explaining simple science concepts. Tali was curious and intelligent, absorbing knowledge like a sponge. Her small hands traced patterns on the holographic screens, her bronze skin reflecting the soft light, her human-like eyes full of wonder. Mira felt proud, but she also knew the council's decision could change everything. One morning, a message arrived from the council. It was brief but clear. Final hearing scheduled. All relevant parties to appear immediately. Mira prepared quickly, gathering Tali in Unit 4A. She packed a small bag with blankets, snacks, and familiar items for the child, knowing that comfort would be important in the formal setting. Tali, sensing the tension, stayed close and whispered, "Mira." "Scared?" Mira smiled and held her hand. "Not scared. We are together. That is what matters." The council chamber was larger than before, filled with more representatives, advisors, and curious onlookers. Holographic displays projected Tali's scans, her unique genetic structure, and the observations Mira had recorded. Every representative had a copy of her report. Every word emphasized Tali's humanity, intelligence, and emotional capacity. Mira led Tali to the front platform. The child clung slightly to her hand, eyes wide with curiosity and trust. Mira knelt beside her, speaking softly so Tali could hear. "It is okay, Tali, they will see you, but they cannot take what we share. Family is ours to define." The lead Talarian scientist addressed the chamber. "Dr. Mira, your report is comprehensive. The child's genetic signature confirms what preliminary scans suggested. An overlap of 98% human traits and 96% Talarian traits. This combination should be impossible by union standards. How do you propose we proceed?" Mira straightened and spoke clearly, her voice carrying across the chamber. "Tali is alive. She is intelligent, aware, and capable of learning. She is not an experiment or a problem to solve. She is a child. My proposal is simple. Allow her to remain under supervised care while we continue observation. Beyond that, recognize that she is not defined solely by genes. Her value comes from her life, her learning, and the care we provide." A representative from the Gladen worlds leaned forward. "Dr. Mira, your words are compelling, but the council must consider broader implications. Unchecked anomalies could disrupt union protocols, interactions between species, and long-term biological stability. How can you ensure safety?" Mira nodded, acknowledging the concern. "Tali is a child. Children are never predictable, no matter their genetic makeup. That is true for humans, Talarians, and every species. Safety comes from guidance, observation, and protection. We can monitor her while giving her freedom to grow. That is how life is nurtured, not by restriction, but by care." The council murmured among themselves. Mira turned to Tali, gently squeezing her hand. The child looked back at her, small eyes full of trust. That trust was more powerful than any chart or scanner reading. Mira drew strength from it. "Members of the council," she continued, "I ask you to see Tali as I see her. A life with potential, intelligence, and emotion. She is proof that life can be more extraordinary than our records suggest. She is a reminder that compassion, care, and family cannot be measured by numbers. That is the human answer." The chamber fell silent. For the first time, representatives looked beyond the charts, beyond probabilities, to the child herself. Tali, sitting quietly beside Mira, radiated curiosity, awareness, and calm. The data could not explain her presence, but her life was undeniable. The lead Talarian scientist spoke slowly. "Dr. Mira, the council recognizes the unprecedented nature of this situation. The child's existence challenges the boundaries of biology, but we cannot deny what we see. Interim protocol will continue, but the child will remain under your care. You are authorized as guardian." Mira felt a rush of relief. She nodded to the council. "Thank you. That is all I ask. Tali's well-being comes first." A Gladian scholar added, "Dr. Mira, your perspective has reminded us that life is more than data. Perhaps the council has been too rigid in focusing on genetic charts rather than living beings. We will update protocols to consider emotional and cognitive development as criteria alongside biology." Mira smiled softly, her heart lightened. Even within the strict confines of union law, understanding and humanity had prevailed. After the formalities, Mira led Tali out of the chamber. The child's small hand remained in hers, and her eyes were wide with wonder. They said, "Family?" Tali asked softly. "Yes," Mira said firmly. "Family. That is what matters. The rest is just numbers and rules." Back in the lab, Mira prepared a small celebration. She laid out snacks, soft mats, and colorful lights to mark the day. Tali's face lit up and she began to explore the familiar space, now filled with a sense of triumph and relief. Unit 4A projected gentle music and soothing visuals. Mira sat beside Tali watching her play. She felt pride but also humility. This experience had reminded her why humanity mattered in the galaxy, not in technology, power, or genetic perfection, but in compassion, trust, and choice. As the evening approached, Mira and Tali stood by the observation dome. Outside, Delta Station glimmered like a jewel against the vast darkness of space. Ships moved slowly along the lanes carrying travelers to distant worlds. Mira thought of all the species watching, all the data streams recording Tali's existence, and all the possibilities ahead. "Tali," Mira said softly. "Do you see the stars?" Tali nodded. "Yes, pretty. They are like life," Mira continued. "Some follow rules and patterns, some move in ways we cannot predict. But each one is important, and each one is part of something bigger. That is what you are, Tali. You are part of something bigger, and that is why you matter." Tali smiled faintly, her small fingers brushing Mira's hand. "Mira, us?" "Yes," Mira said firmly. "Us. Family." In the days that followed, Tali became more comfortable with her surroundings. She learned quickly, observing the behavior of other children, interacting carefully with researchers, and asking questions that revealed a sharp and curious mind. Mira recorded her growth, amazed at how adaptable and intelligent the child was. Each day she saw proof that life could be extraordinary in ways that numbers could never predict. The council continued to study the reports, but Mira no longer feared their scrutiny. Tali's presence, her trust, and her humanity were more powerful than any chart, rule, or scanner. Mira had learned that being human meant more than genes. It meant choosing kindness, courage, and family, even in the face of impossible odds. One evening, Mira and Tali returned to the observation dome. The stars stretched endlessly across the sky. Mira held Tali close. "We faced the council," Mira said softly. "They saw the numbers and they listened. But most importantly, they saw you." Tali leaned against Mira, her small body warm and calm. "We okay?" she whispered. Mira smiled. "We are more than okay. We are family. Nothing can change that." The stars seemed to glow brighter as Mira watched, thinking of the journey that had begun when she first found Tali on Delta 7. The child had survived the unknown, defied probabilities, and reminded the galaxy that life could not always be measured by rules or scans. Mira felt a sense of peace knowing that she had done what mattered most: protected, nurtured, and loved. Weeks later, the council issued an official update. Tali's records were carefully noted, her extraordinary genetics documented, and her guardian officially recognized. Policies were adjusted to ensure that extraordinary life forms would be treated with care and respect, taking into account intelligence, emotion, and choice, not just numbers. Mira read the message aloud to Tali, who clapped her small hands with delight. "You see?" Mira said, smiling. "The galaxy has learned that life is more than charts and codes. You are proof." Tali laughed softly, a sound full of wonder and joy. Mira hugged her close, feeling the weight of responsibility, relief and love all at once. That night, as they sat by the observation dome, Mira whispered, "We faced the impossible. Tali, the scanners said one thing, the council said another. But we know the truth. Family is what we choose. You are mine and I am yours. That is the human answer." Tali nestled closer, her small hand in Mira's, and the stars shone like witnesses to a promise kept. In that quiet, infinite space, Mira understood that humanity's strength was not in perfection, rules, or technology. It was in the courage to care, the wisdom to protect, and the power to define family beyond impossibility. And the galaxy, for the first time, had seen what that truly meant.